Hey, how's it going? Live with Cycling UK, Bants Bikes Being Female, episode 5, season 2. We're talking about route planning. It's going to be a geeky one today, but really important and it's really popular, funnily enough. I don't know. Yeah, apparently loads of people want to know about route planning. It is so important within cycling, especially, and this series is aimed at beginners, and especially when you're getting into it, how to work out where you're going, and the best way for doing that by bike. There's loads of options out there. It can be a bit of a minefield. So we've got our expert guests to talk us through that today. But before we get them onto screen, just to give you a little bit of a background about Cycling UK, we are a charity. So our mission is to get 1 million more people on bicycles, and this series is part of that, helping make that journey easier for people. We also make the streets safer, we make the laws better for cycling, we get off-road routes open for access to mountain bikers. We do loads of stuff for cycling. So if you'd like to find out more about what we do as a charity, please do check out our website, cyclinguk.org. We'd love to see you there. So without further ado, let's get on with today's series. We're going to invite our usual guest, Fran, onto the screen first to come and say hello.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Nice to see you back. You're getting sort of into the Christmas spirit with some knitwear there.
Yeah, I nearly put a Christmas jumper on, but then I realised I only actually own one, so I had to save it for next week. So I went for something slightly halfway house.
That's kind of where my thought process with this. Loads of people at work are starting to go into the Christmas jumper phase, but it does feel like something that sort of need to ease into, like step by step, go a little bit wild jumper and then full on Christmas. Maybe next week for our Christmas special. Will we see you?
Well, exactly. And I don't own a whole range of Christmas jumpers. I've got one, so I can't peak too early.
Well, it's great to have you back. For those who don't know you, can you give a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Fran. I'm the operations manager at Bella Vixen. We're an online women's cycle retailer. So we're trying to be that one-stop shop for all your cycling kit, especially to get you through the winter. But I've also cycled myself for 25 odd years, started off-road, mountain biking. Now I do a lot more road and cyclocross racing when it's allowed.
Fantastic, thank you. And who's watching this from at home? Again, do the usual, let us know where you're listening from, what you'd like to get out of this session today as well, where we're talking about route planning. And have you succumbed to the Christmas jumper yet? Do let us know in the comments as we get Charlene onto the screen. Da-da-da.
Hello.
Yay, you made it. Nice to see
you. I'm here. Yes, how are you?
We're good. How are you doing?
Yes, good. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of myself. I am, for those of you that haven't seen me before, I am an ex-professional cyclist, and now I am specialising in all things fitness, not just on the bike, but how you can keep fit off the bike through online training, like HIIT and mobility exercises, and yeah, all-round fitness recovery. I'm your gal for that. So kind of not really switched, but I have, I'm focusing now not just on the cycling, more in general, and how I can help everyone get fit.
Excellent. But you do have that cycling background and knowledge at the highest and the top level. So we're really delighted to have you as our guests. And can we invite Jenny on?
Hi.
Hi, welcome back. Nice to see you back. You're somebody who joins every now and again when we've got a bit of a Cycling UK push. We really appreciate your time. Let us know a bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm Jenny. I'm head of behaviour change and development for England at Cycling UK. So our team essentially is all about getting more people cycling in all different forms, with lots of focus on beginners and sort of returners. I cycle a bit. I commute when I don't work from home by bike, and cycling with pals and leisure stuff, kind of not terribly serious, not serious off-roading or roading. I have bright yellow hybrid, which is my do everything kind of bike.
Oh, it's bright yellow. I should ride it. And then
you would blend beautifully with it today.
It sounds so good. As you can see, we've got quite a spectrum of cyclists, and our next guest, our star guest for today, is also from a very different background as well. So we hope that whatever we talk about and whatever discipline you're into or type of cycling that you're into, we're covered with our guest today. And so let's welcome Rachel on. And I'm also going to say hello to Janet and Jules. Nice to see you there in the chat. Thank you. Hi, Rachel. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. So give us a little bit of background about you, because you're new to Bants Bikes and being female. We've not seen you before.
Yes, this is a first time on the show. Thanks for inviting me. So I've got quite a long history in the bike industry. I work for various different companies, but I'm currently working specifically on female projects. Probably more mountain biking and gravel riding than anything else. That's kind of my background. I've been really lucky to race all around the world on my mountain bike. Anything from downhill racing to enduro racing, cross country, gravel riding. I kind of dab my hand into anything. And as part of doing like my female events, I work as mountain bike guide. So navigation and route planning is kind of really central in that. So I guess my sort of avenue is a bit more mountain bike orientated.
Excellent. Yeah, and that knowledge of navigation is precisely why we wanted your expertise here today, because I'm going to take a bit of a punt here. As we've got to know each other all through the series, I reckon there's some of us who are more likely to plan their routes in advance than others. Charlene, are you much of a route planner? You're on mute.
I'm not anymore. Just guess what I'm saying. Okay, guess what happened.
We'll do a mime show.
Yeah. So it depends, is what I said. Okay, don't go assuming, right? I know what you would assume. So I do plan. It's really important to plan, but I also like to adventure. So the main things is usually it's kind of a mix. So do you want me to go on, or do you want me to save that for later?
What I'd really like to pick your brains on is, what to you are some of the pros of not planning? What do you enjoy about not planning a route? We're going to start with this before we go further.
So I never go out. I never do go out blind, because I have heard some stories of people ending up on motorways. So that, yeah, you know, when you're in a different country, like I've traveled the world with my bike, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what kind of sign, what that sign's saying. But you know, first, I guess if we're sticking local, the benefits of not planning are you can find some really cool routes. And when I was cycling, I never really put a time limit on it. When I had a long ride, I would think, okay, say I've got a 5-hour ride, I would think which direction I'm going to go in. And then from there, sometimes I would just go out and ride. And if I saw a little lane, I would just be like, oh, what's down there? I mean, sometimes it was a house and I'd have to turn back. It'd be like a little country house. But sometimes you find really good cut-through lanes, or just a small little, like a road that's not as busy, that you could maybe do some efforts on, one that's parallel to a main road, and that's just cutting out a main road that you never used to like. So for me, that's kind of the benefit of not route planning all the time. I would always look at a big map and see where the big main roads to stay away from are. But yeah, it's more the roads to stay away from than the roads not to go, the roads to go on.
To explore, yeah, brilliant. And Fran, what about you? Have you had any moments where you've just gone off the beaten track and explored without planning where you're going? And actually, before you tell your story, I've seen some questions coming in the comments. Thank you for sending them through. Please keep sending them in, and comments as well if you've got something you'd like to expand on, and we'll be tapping into those as the show goes on.
Yeah, well, I've got a very good friend. We were training for a big event a few years back, and, you know, we'd have, like Charlene said, something like a 5-hour ride to do. And, you know, we did do some rides where we planned them, but some of them we just thought gets a bit boring. always planning it. So we became a bit more adventurous. And I don't have anything specific, but I've got many of our happiest memories are of just freestyling it and ending up coming across a cafe that we never would have found, or finding some private roads that are accessible and you're allowed to ride, but they're like, the kind of bridle ways that are paved so that you're allowed to ride them, but there's no cars. So, we've got many kind of funny moments of just going out and going, oh, do you remember that time we went to Super Sausage, which is a cafe in Northampton? It's not somewhere we'd normally ride. So, nowadays it's really easy because you've always got your phone as backup. So if you get to a main road and you think, oh, this looks like a major road, you can get your phone out and have a look and go, can we ride on it? Is there a turning a short distance ahead? And if not, maybe we'll just, go back.
I like that. Is that something that you agree with, Rach? See your hand going up there?
Well, my family nickname for me is Stato because I love stats. I love planning routes. I'll always know the elevation, how far we've gone, our average speed. But having said that, some of the best rides are where I haven't planned the route and we go with the flow. Like, it can often depend on the area that you live or the area that you're riding. But I currently live in Surrey, and there's quite a well-known area called the Surrey Hills where it's just a hub for mountain biking, and it's a place where you just rock up on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, and there's just hundreds of people there, and you could just join on any group, jump on any ride, instead of being like set in your ways of which route you're going. I think they're some of the best rides where you kind of just go with the flow, see who's going when.
I love that. And as we see in the bottom of the screen here, if you've got any comments where you'd like to say where you've had good times, where you haven't planned, and sometimes you can have such joyous, unexpected things happen, and that is the joy of not planning. However, it can also have a flip side. So again, we're going to go for hands up here. Has any of you gone out for a ride unplanned and then regretted it? Fran, go for it.
Not regretted the ride, because I can't think of many rides I've ever regretted. I've regretted the lack of planning.
Yeah.
Because also normally I think sometimes when you don't plan a ride, you can end up forgetting all the other things around the ride. So for example, this friend that I used to ride with regularly, we did an unplanned ride once, but we also didn't take any money. And it chucked it down halfway around the ride, and we were quite a long way from home. And I'll never forget going into the Goat Farm, which is a cafe in just outside Aylesbury, and begging this woman to give us free coffee and cake and saying, I'll phone you when I get home to pay. The best thing about it was I was working at Vixen at this point, but my friend's a police officer, and I'm like, she's a police officer, she's really trustworthy, please. And they served us, and then we got home and we phoned and we paid for the cake, and it was all good.
I'm really glad that you finished up that story, that you did actually call them back up.
We did.
Charlene. Oh, so I have to go for Jenny. Go for Jenny. We haven't heard from you for a while.
Yeah, it was during lockdown actually, and I was starting to cycle quite a lot more. So I went out and did my first 20 miler on my own or whatever. So nothing like what you guys do with your 5 hours and all the rest of it. But I planned that route meticulously. I knew exactly where I wanted to get to, and I knew, like, I kind of planned how long it was going to take me, and I had it all planned out. What I hadn't done, which I should have listened to Rachel's advice, I hadn't looked at the elevation and the profile of the route. That essentially, if I'd gone the other way round, it would have been this glorious, like, flat and downhill, kind of wonderful, easy 20 miles. But it actually was flat, and then just constant inclines most of the way. And I didn't fuel myself properly because I thought I was a big shot that could go out on just a protein shake. And so by 10 miles in was absolutely starving, and just cross because it was all uphill. But what I did find was halfway round thinking, I want to go and find the river. So where I was cycling was near the river. So I went off down a bridleway and went down a track and just found the most beautiful, like, quiet, deserted kind of bridleway with these beautiful views and loads of swans on the river, and just so had these wonderful moments, like, throughout, where I did go off my plan to kind of go and find something that was really cool and really, like, beautiful. So it was, overall, I was super proud of the ride at the end of it, because I'd gone out and I'd done it and I completed it. But when I was looking at my Strava afterwards, like, you idiot, if you'd just turned around, it just would have been such an easy, glorious ride. But as my mum says, the harder ones are the ones where it's more of a workout and you like properly earn that lunch when you get back, or feel really great about what you've done and all the rest of it. So in that sense, it was a real achievement. But in the other sense, I could have had a much easier ride if I'd been more of a plateau.
And I think sometimes when things don't go so well, they're the rides that stick in your memory. You know, they're the ones that make the stories, and they're ones that you look back on afterwards. And Helen Tovey here, she says that spontaneous rides are fabulous. So I don't want people to think, as we go into this discussion and we do talk about all different types of route planning, that we're saying you shouldn't just go off and enjoy yourself sometimes, because there is definitely an enjoyment to that. However, and especially when you're getting into cycling, there can be a little bit of a danger to not planning your ride properly as well. Rachel's smiling there because we had one where it wasn't so much the route planning, but the lack of weather planning and understanding about elevation and things like that, how weather can change when you get into a mountain. Do you want to tell the story, Rach? I've ever come to thinking I was going to die.
Before I tell the story, I do mountain bike guiding, so if anyone comes with me, this isn't like an example of the kind of ride I would take you on. I only took Anna because I know she's a very competent mountain biker. So we went out on a mountain bike ride in the Lake District on a route that I've done maybe 20, 30 times before. I was very, very familiar with it. And this is a good sort of point, really. You can be totally familiar with a route, but that's not kind of where your route planning ends. Like, the route planning involves kind of assessing the day, the weather on the day, the conditions. And you can't just take things for granted when you're doing mountain bike planning. So we were on a route in the Lake District, a place called Nantbield, the Nantbield route. It's quite a popular one, but you do go quite high. And I just thought, well, it's fine. Like, I did this a few weeks ago. Off we trot. And there's quite a bit of hiker biking. So for anyone who's not done that before, you obviously have to throw your bike on your back to get up some of the sections. And it was just a little bit tougher than it had been in previous weeks. We had a lot of mist. Perhaps I think it was verging on snowing. And it just took us a bit longer, and we ended up getting a few punctures between us as well. I'd planned the route. I had the route on my phone. I had it downloaded offline, and my phone failed. My phone just froze with the cold. So we're sort of at the top of a mountain. Anna and I, we had a double puncture. We had no tubes left, and we were freezing. The mist had come in, and my phone had sort of kind of temporarily died. And I knew there was a shortcut to get to another section to start descending quite quickly. And I just sort of had to guess, because my phone wasn't working anymore, GPS wasn't working. And as the mist kind of cleared,
more than about 5 meters in front of ourselves.
there was a bit of a cliff, which sort of scared us both a little bit. We did get down absolutely fine, and it was there were no issues.
Yeah.
But that's where it can go wrong. And I think that's probably a point that we'll discuss shortly. You can't always rely on technology.
Absolutely. And in fact, I was going to come to that later, but why don't we go on to it now, because it's coming up in the comments as well. Nicola said that she returned to cycle touring after an 18-year gap and arrived in France only to discover that you'd run out of data with no way to top up. And, you know, that is such a classic scenario. It's something that, in hindsight, you're like, well, of course, I'm going across to a different country. Is my data roaming going to work there? It's the sort of thing that you need to pre-plan, but you're not maybe thinking of it at the time. So your technology might not always go to plan in the way that you think it does. So why don't we go into this now, Rachel, again, because you're a great believer in maps. The old classic, old school map reading. Who here, put your hands up, who here is able to just read a map, a paper map? Good, so I think we've got a pretty strong panel. Fran, where did you first learn to read a map?
I don't actually know. I think I'm lucky because map reading, I think, goes hand in hand with a sense of direction. And there's something about being able to navigate anyway. I think. But I'm quite pleased to say that the very first time we drove to Italy, to the Dolomites in 2016, we didn't own a sat nav, and I got us all the way there with map reading, and I didn't get us lost once.
Amazing. That is so good. I'm going to throw this out to the audience as well. Like, who here is able to read maps? John's just put maps, question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, who uses them anymore? But as we're finding out, you can't always rely on the technology. And I still believe that it's a vital skill. We've got some nodding going along here. It's a vital skill that could get you out of sticky situations, despite how good technology is these days. So Rachel, anything else you want to add about paper map reading?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in maps. I'm on both sides of things. Like I'm a big fan of Commute, the app. I think it's absolutely brilliant for navigating and planning your routes. You can download your routes offline, so you don't have to rely on like your data. However, these obviously your phone or your GPS, they depend on batteries. Like, I've been out in all conditions. I've been in like -25 conditions when I'm riding, and your batteries can die, your gadgets can die, they can freeze. And so whilst it's brilliant having this technology that we have today, like all these different apps to plan our rides, I think everybody should know how to read a map as a backup, know what the contour lines are, what they mean, if that's a descent or is it a decline, is it a steep hill, is it a gradual hill, is it a main road, is it a tiny road? If you can read a map, you can read the lay of the land, you can tell what sort of kind of terrain it might be, and this is like a great backup. It's a great complement to the apps that you can have now, like Strava or Commute and the Cycling UK planner. I think they do complement each other, but you should never really leave yourself in a situation where you can't really read how to get somewhere.
Absolutely. And as Katrina here points out, she can read a map, but not whilst riding. And that's true, isn't it? That is a downfall of the paper maps. It's not quite so easy to use as you go along. So for different types of cycling, different purposes, there are different tools and technology out there for helping with this route planning. What kind of things do you guys use? What are your regular go-tos for planning? Fran?
I have used Commute a bit. I find it quite difficult to physically plan the route, and it goes whack, and it doesn't like plotting circular routes, and I got quite frustrated with it. And since Strava have updated their route building app, I now find Strava a lot better and more intuitive and easy to use. Particularly now you can use it on your phone, because if you've got Strava Premium, there is a feature, a quick draw feature, where you literally use your finger and kind of do the loop you want, and it will in effect plot it for you. So it's really simple and quick to do, like a quick, easy road ride if you want to do 30 miles and you want to go west, because that's where the wind's coming from. So Strava's always been the one that I've tended to fall back on, because also it automatically uploads to your Garmin now with their recent update. It goes straight onto the Garmin. You don't need to plug it in or do anything.
So is that, because I don't really use Strava myself much, is that a paid for platform? Because I think I got it and it's free, but I don't get so many of the features.
Yeah, correct. So Strava's got two levels. You've got your free level, and now you've got the subscriber. They used to call it premium, but I think it's just called Strava subscription or something now, subscribers. And yeah, the more detailed route planning will be on the subscribers app, but it's like £4 a month. It works out insane, cheaper than your coffee and cake. So for me, it's worth it just for the benefit of having the route planning.
And I think we're not going to go into Charlene's tech of choice here, because as we decided, she can only turn left being a track cyclist. So she's not going to be getting lost anytime soon. Rachel, you're a fan of Commute. Can you tell us a little bit about the pros of that?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Commute. I've used it kind of on and off for a few years, and I started using it a lot more since the first lockdown in March. Like many people, I was furloughed or at home, and I've always used it to plan routes or to share routes with people who I'm guiding or friends if we're going out on a specific route. But I started using it a lot more during lockdown to actually show me some new roads where I live or new trails. I kind of feel like I know a lot of the paths in the area, but I started using it saying, okay, I want to go here. I want to go to that cafe 40 miles away, and I want to go off road. Show me a route that I wouldn't normally go on, take me out of my comfort zone, and let me explore some extra areas, more interesting areas. So I started using it as a bit of a game, like, oh, where's it going to take me today? Like a surprise. I wouldn't look at it and just see where it took me. And then, yeah, so I sort of started using it a bit more that way. I guess what's good about, I think is good about Commute, it is a free route planner. You do just have to buy like the mapping area for where you live for sort of a small charge, and you can it helps you map according to your discipline. So you can choose, I'm going to go enduro mountain biking today, or I'm going to go gravel riding or road riding, and it'll plot your route accordingly. And then you can choose your fitness level. So if you're super fit, it will kind of give you a rough time, how long the ride will take you. So I think it's just really like, it's great for beginners, or it's great for more experienced people. You can use it according to your sort of needs.
And that would be great. We did a session about motivation last week, and that sort of sense of surprise, I think, could be a real winner for people looking for a bit more spark in their cycling life as well. And also, you said that you'd pick a cafe and say, I want to go to that. Would that mean that this cafe is somewhere that you already know exists, or is there something in the app that could tell you cafe stops or anything like that?
Yeah. I'll often, or if I see somebody on Instagram that they're doing the whole like be at a cafe stop, and I'll be like, oh, that cake looks really nice. I'd quite like to go there. And then, so on Commute, there is a feature where you can just pick. You can choose the map to show you like the highlights or places of interest, cafes, and I'll just find that cafe and say, route me there.
Excellent. So it's already built in.
Yeah.
And Jenny, you're a bit of a fan of Commute as well, you're saying.
Yeah, I use it for all of for hiking and running, as well as for my cycling. And I like that you can so talk about sense of direction. I can read a map, but my sense of direction is appalling. Like I without being able to read a map, I wouldn't be able to get anywhere because I just don't know whether to turn left or right. But I used to live in Surrey, on the edge of the hills, and so I would look on Commute, and you can see where other people have highlighted a viewpoint or a particular stretch of bridleway that's good for cycling, whatever. So I would pick a point that I wanted to get to and then plan the route around that, taking in other people's highlights, so that you know that you're going to get to that point in the hills and have an amazing view over the Chantries, or you're going to get to that point, which is a lovely straight flat bridleway for running, or whatever it might be. So having that, I guess it's the sense of community that Commute has kind of created around the app that actually helps you with the planning if you don't really know where you're going or how to get there. And then I can plan a circular route using other people's highlights, so that I know it's a tried and tested route for other, if I'm somewhere that I've not been before or not been cycling before, knowing that other cyclists have recommended those points and routes, I know that it's going to be a safe route and a sort of well-trusted route, and that helps with planning circulars in a new area. So I used it in the Lake District when I was up there for hiking and running and that sort of thing, using other people's, and then use it a lot in my home area as well. I find it a really useful tool.
Yeah, and we're talking quite a lot about sort of bridle paths and off-road riding. And also, I'd like to hear in the comments, what apps do you use? Are you agreeing with these Strava and Commute's tried and tested places as well? Do you look out for what other people have used? So please do get in the comments. I've seen loads coming in already, which is wonderful. It means we can all learn from each other. Yep, Charlene, you had something you wanted to add? Turn left.
Turn left. Just go left. If it's left, next left, and you're back where you started.
Right, done.
Quite a short route, but you're there.
Yeah, very true. But I just use good old Google Maps. I go on Google Maps before Fran's face. Google Maps.
Well, you've got to memorise it then, haven't you?
I get my pen and paper out, and then I write down in a long strip the names of towns, and then I put R and L, and then that's it, really. And then I stick it to my top bar. Yeah. Top
I
tip.
mean, I can't see anything that could possibly go wrong with that.
I hope she's not writing it on the back of her hand.
Yeah. That's just how I've always done it. I don't think I've gone with the times, but that's how we used to do it, so that's how I still do it now. But I really like the sound of this kaboot.
It's not kaput. It works very well. And the links to it are going in the comments, Charlene, so don't worry, you can find out as anyone else if you'd like to find out more about it. We've also heard from Shirley, who popped out and wanted to know whether she'd missed us talking about understanding elevation. No, Shirley, you haven't missed it, don't worry, but I'm glad that you brought it up because it fits in very nicely with this sort of ride away and off-road riding and understanding of where you're going chat that we're having. So who would like to talk a little bit about that? How can you understand elevation, especially using those apps, Strava, Commute, or a paper map? Rachel?
Yeah, elevation. I think this kind of comes down to I think a bit of a bigger point with navigation, that ultimately navigation and route planning, it's almost a little bit like bike mechanics, where it's quite easy just for someone else to do it a lot of the time. Just take it to the bike shop or someone else navigate or take control of the route planning. And unfortunately, a lot of this just comes down to experience. And experience with elevation and how steep things are, that does actually just come with a bit of experience. What will be steep to one person will not be very steep to another person. So there is that side of it, which unfortunately does just come down to knowing what you class as steep or not. But I think on the apps, on a lot of the planners, and again, I'll talk about Commute because it's the one that I use, on their route planner, at the bottom, there will be like an elevation profile. So it'll show you kind of the profile of your ride as you build it. And if you hover over the sort of the squiggles with your cursor, it will tell you the percentage of how steep that incline is. And I think this definitely, obviously it changes whether you're on-road and off-road. But I think I mean, the girls might say differently, but I think for me, anything over sort of 6% on road starts, you can tell that's getting steeper. 5 is like, anything around 5 is like quite cruisy, but once you start kicking up from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's getting a little bit steeper. So it's kind of understanding those percentages. And the apps, if you sort of hover over them, they'll tell you how steep things are. Or after you've built your ride as well in the planner, it will tell you the total climbing and total descending. And I'll talk about off-road, but I always have a rule around 500 meters of climbing in a sort of 2-hour ride is like a pretty standard mountain bike ride. If you're going over 500 meters of climbing in a ride, you're starting to do quite a hilly ride. So it's kind of,
I just ask, what do those percentages mean?
Oh, so the percentages is kind of like, so when you're driving in your car and you see those like red triangles at the side of the road, and it's either like 10%, 15%, 20%, or 30% if you're in the Lake District and you get a few of those, that basically is the gradient. So it's the percentage gradient of the incline. So it's just sort of the same as on the road signs, what that will relate to.
Excellent, thank you. So we've talked quite a lot about off-road here, but going on-road and trying to avoid certain types of routes or exactly what you're looking for. Jenny, you've said in a previous episode of Bants Bikes Being Female, when you're cycling to work, for example, for the first time, don't assume that the route that you go by bike will necessarily be the same that you take by car or by public transport. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of what we've kind of mentioned already about looking for the smaller roads, or avoiding who it was at the beginning saying we ended up on a motorway, basically not doing that. Fran. So that's where things like, if I can plug it, the Cycling UK Journey Planner comes in really useful, because you can choose a different, it's really good for an A to B route. So where you've got, perfect for commuting essentially, or if you're going to the shops or whatever, you're going to a point, not about creating that, beautiful circular route or whatever. And so you can look at on that, it's either the fastest route, the quietest route, or the balanced route essentially, so kind of in between the two. It'll show you the elevation profile as well, so you can check out whether the start of your journey is on the uphill, or then you've got that nice cruise downhill into the office to cool down, or whether it's the other way around. But by using the quietest route, for example, if we're thinking about starting out on journey planning or being a more novice cyclist, then looking for the quietest route is going to take you down those smaller roads, perhaps bits where you've got a cycle lane or a nice bit of infrastructure that's segregated from traffic, so that you can plan your route depending on levels of confidence, how well you know those roads, and how much of a rush you're in as well. Perhaps that the faster route might be on the sort of faster roads, or the more direct route, but actually the quieter route takes you on the smaller lanes or cycle routes or whatever it might be. So it's just kind of a way to help you plan that and start to see different ways around. So a road that might be closed off to cars because it's a bit of a rat run, or is close to a school, or at the moment with lots of local authorities changing access ways and to encourage more cycling, a route that you can't do in the car because it's cut off to vehicles or whatever, you might be able to cycle round. So then you're cutting off the sort of the main road or the big roundabout or the big traffic light junction, whatever it might be, and take that safer, quieter route on the bike. So it's not just, oh, go on, sorry, Anna.
I was going to say, how would you recommend that people find those routes? How can they work that out?
Well, I guess a bit of practice. Use a route planner to plan that. Look for the quieter route. Understand, if you know if it's in your local area, so if it's your route to work, then you might know the roads and the sort of the routes around and everything already. I'd always say for commuting, if you're starting to commute by bike, so you've not done it before, have a practice at the weekend where there's fewer cars on the road. You're not having to do it in rush hour, and you're not on a time frame as well, so you don't have to be there by 8:30 to get changed before going to the office or whatever. So you can take a bit of time and do, like everyone was saying earlier, have a bit of an explore. If that road looks like it's taking you in the right direction and it's a quieter road, then cycle down there and see what happens. And if it's dead end, then you come back, but you're not on a time schedule and you're able to just sort of take it as a bit of an adventure and a bit of a practice. So then when that first day hits that you're doing your commute on the bike, then you're ready for it and you know where you're going. You've got that route planned. If your data fails, then you're still able to memorize that route because you've practiced it.
Yeah, perfect. Charlene, you've mentioned in our private chat the National Cycling Network. So what do you want to say about that?
Yes, so actually this is only something that I've really come across recently, and I came across it this summer when I started going back out on my bike a lot more, and rather than just the commuting, I was doing my rides at the weekends and things. And so I decided to ride from Glasgow to Loch Lomond, and I think the roundabout journey was about 70k, not 70 miles, but 75k. And there is quite a busy road that takes you to Loch Lomond, so I thought there must be loads of people cycle there. There must be a route, and I looked online, and it was actually from that website, the National Cycle Network, that I found, and they have signposted routes. So that was quite an adventure, because it gives you the starting point. On the website, it also gives you all the turns, when you turn the thing. So if you don't quite find a signpost, you can actually stop, go on your phone and check it. So there was a lot of it is kind of cycle paths. Some of it the start of it was on the road, then it was on cycle paths, and it was all kind of on and off. Like that, but it was quite a nice little adventure. If you're not in a rush and you're not wanting to do training on the ride, and you just want a nice kind of looking at the scenery, just out for a chat with your friends, you don't need to worry about too much traffic, that's a really good option actually. And yeah, family rides. The thing is, when I was on these kind of cycle paths, it was quite busy because everyone's taken up cycling recently. So maybe if you're a beginner in cycling, maybe one to avoid to start with, because there's going to be lots of cyclists around at the weekends. But if you've got a weekday that you can get out there and it's a nice day, I mean, if it's raining, head on out. There'll be no one there. There'll not be there'll not be many people there. But I chose the most beautiful day in Scotland in summer to cycle to Loch Lomond, and it just turned into just having a blether, a wee chat with my friend on the bike, and it was a great day. But as I said, I wouldn't choose to go on that if I was wanting a tougher ride. It was pretty flat, and you'll obviously get different kinds of rides, but I think they look for the safest option off-road for you, like cycle paths and things. So yeah, really good option there.
And I love that. It's a really good problem to have, isn't it? If we're trying to avoid traffic and all of a sudden the traffic we're talking about is from other cyclists. I think we've reached a really good point if that's the biggest problem that we're facing. Fran, you had your hand up there. Something about the networks.
Yeah, I think Charlene's point's very good about the national cycle networks. And I think a lot depends where you live. So I can imagine where Charlene is or out in the countryside more, it's great. But we have one, I think it's 50 or something, that literally goes down my street. And then it takes you right up the alleyway where you're not allowed to ride your bike, and that's known to be a little bit dodgy. So every time I see these blue signs when I'm out riding, I think, oh, I wonder where that goes. So I think you just have to be careful, or just do a bit of research about your area. And it might be that you don't use the NCN to get out of town. But I think this one goes from Bicester to Milton Keynes. So therefore, you could go the road out of town and then pick up the NCN when you're further out into the countryside, and it takes you on some better roads. I think like all of these route planners, I think it's good to use more than one source. I don't think any one source is perfect, and it's always good to use a backup of whichever app you choose, combined with whether it be your maps, i.e. hard maps, OS maps, or Google Maps or whatever, because there is a bit of an art to route planning, as we all know from probably the stories where it's all gone horribly wrong. Or I've done many a ride where I've tried to follow one that I've downloaded off our club website. So our club, Bicester Millennium's got some set routes. I've downloaded one, said to my boyfriend, "Oh, there's a great 50-miler out to Burford," and then halfway out the front door, and we've ridden 5 miles. My Garmin's telling me something weird. It turns out I followed it the wrong way. But your Garmin isn't intuitive just to pick up and say, you're on the route, but you're going back to front. So it just keeps telling you you're off course. But then you've got the purple line that you're supposed to be following. So it becomes then problematic in itself. We ended up getting to where we thought the cafe was, that obviously wasn't there, and then aborting the ride and riding home in a sulk. So there is not the route planning that isn't as straightforward as download a route to your Garmin and follow it.
Yeah, it never is just that straightforward, is it? And there's plenty of comments coming in of people talking about how that technology can go wrong. Jenny, the Cycling UK route planner, so we've got that route planner. Where's its best use, would you say? What's it best use for our journey planner? Yeah, our journey planner. Because I know that it's got different options on there where you can pick quieter routes or more direct routes and things like that.
So I would say for road, I've used it for road cycling and for A to B. So when you're going to a destination rather than using a circular route, I think what Fran said is absolutely right. There's so many ways that you can plan that route that it's about finding the right route planner for what you're trying to do. But for road cycling and finding infrastructure that's cycling specific and all the rest of it, the journey planner is great for that. I think also it's worth then sort of looking, having a bit more of an explore on the Cycling UK website about the other sort of advice and guidance that's on there, and on the route section of the website, and hopefully we can put up the link to it. There we go, as if by magic. There's lots of information there for different types of rides that you might want to do, whether it's family rides, off-road riding, but then also guides by counties. So if you're perhaps taking up cycling you can have a look at what's going on in your area, or if you're, taking the bikes on holiday or planning to, hire bikes when you're traveling around the UK, then you can use that as a, kind of inspirational part as well. So there's loads of, advice and guidance on the website. It's just full of, sort of information to help you get started or keep going, whatever. So whilst the journey planner will help with those sort of A to B routes, there's also a load more information for the other types of cycling that you might want to do, and then how to sort of plan those routes or use other people's ideas for inspiration as well, which, let's be honest, all of the things that we're talking about is about sharing that knowledge and helping each other out and sharing routes and ideas so that everyone can have kind of the most enjoyable cycle, whether it is the cycle to work or whether it's, heading out for an adventure on a Saturday using other people's highlights as, milestones on your route kind of thing.
And like you say, there's so many different types of cycling that you're going to be wanting to plan routes for. There's no just one answer. There's no one box fits all. Even within our panel, we're using different apps, different ways of applying it, and in the comments as well. Thanks everyone for the comments. Fran, you'll be pleased to know that you're not alone. You're not the only person who's cycled a route going the wrong way round on their Garmin. So well done. And it's about sharing that information and that knowledge. I just want to go into one more thing before we open this up to the public Q&A, which is sort of using these apps and route planning for more than just getting to where you're going, finding a cafe, avoiding traffic, things like that, and understanding elevation, but also more for perhaps training purposes. These apps can get super, super technical, as Stato over here could go in. I'm sure, Charlene, you know quite a lot about that as well, where you can go into, the world of apps and route planning can get so numerical. And if you're that way inclined, the world's your oyster. Rachel, what other things can you be plotting into your routes if you're really getting it to become more of, I suppose, an advanced cyclist, and you really want to maximize every moment of your riding?
So I guess it depends if which discipline, if you're mountain biking or road cycling. But I know and what you're trying to achieve. I know last winter I was trying to train to race cross country this year, which basically didn't happen. But I knew that one of my sort of weaknesses was technical climbing off road. So I sort of used the app to search for sort of steep off-road sections that I could climb, and that's how I built my my routes to suit my specific training goals. And then I would spend an hour going up and down, up and down.
And Fran, you popped your hand up there.
Well, you've also got the famous, I say famous because I'm laughing, Strava segments. So what that is you can, I believe this is a premium function again, to actually create the segment. You can pick a point from A to B and you can create that as a segment. So for example, I've created my commute home. So I've created from just down the road from Velevixen, where it starts, where I go under the motorway bridge, all the way back to the main road about 2 miles out of my house. I created that as a segment. You then give it a name, and then when you ride it, it will give you a leaderboard, and then other people then that ride the segment also come on the leaderboard, and you can see who's the fastest over that segment at any given time, and they call it King of the Mountain and Queen of the Mountain. But I use it, people get very competitive against others. I use it to compete against myself, really, because then you can, I'm doing the same stretch of road over and over, and I can see if I'm improving. You can do really short segments. You can create as long or as short as you want. But it can be quite good fun, but it can also be very obsessive. Some people can get quite obsessed over these things.
I think that has to come up in this conversation, that balance. Like, Strava has turned some lovely cyclists that I've known into complete competitive animals. Suddenly they're on a segment and nothing else matters because they're competing with all the other people on Strava who have ever ridden that segment, forgetting perhaps that there might be dog walkers on the route, there might be families on the route. And like you say, you can use it to get competitive, and that can be really, really healthy. But I think there can be an irresponsible side that people need to be aware of. Rachel?
Despite my nickname being Stato, since I stopped training happily, I use a Wahoo now instead of a Garmin. I just decided to try something new. I don't have I no longer have the page which shows me all my stats. I turn it off now, and I just have the map section just show me my routes. And I've sort of done that on purpose, so I just don't get obsessed with the stats. And since I've started doing that, I've enjoyed my riding a lot more. And I think that's probably a lot of people will experience something similar.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's all about enjoying it. That is the most important thing. I know that Charlene gives that as her advice when she's training people, even if she's training them to be really high level athletes. Charlene, do you want to add something more about how you can use these apps and your route planning? What type of route you might want to do if you're actually training for something?
Yes, so I sorry, I have a lot of experience finding routes for very, very specific training and giving other athletes, as a coach, specific rides. And for example, if I was to give Fran, okay, I'm going to say, right, Fran, in today's training, you have 3 times 1 minute efforts, and you need to get your watts above 500 for all those. We're just pretending here. Right, 500 for a minute, right? So watts, we'll just talk about watts, is the power that goes through the pedal. Simplify it, okay? So the amount of force that goes through the pedals that you create, and it comes up with a number. So it just gives you a number. And basically, you're like, right, well, I'm not going to do that down a hill, because you're not going to be able to push on your pedals down the hill. So then you would have to think, right, I can't even do it on the flat because I need to push really hard. So you're going to be looking for a hill. You're going to be looking for a hill that's not got any junctions coming out of it, no kind of roads at the side where cars are going to be coming out of, and you're going to have to stop your effort because 1, it's going to be dangerous for everybody, and 2, it's going to be dangerous for everybody. So basically, you're having to look for these roads, and that might be on, so for when you're training as an elite athlete, and like Rachel said, it's great, see when you do your long rides and you've just got your coach gives you a zone 2 ride, and that is heart rate, or it can be the equivalent in walks as well. You would just say, right, I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to ride, and hopefully it's zone 2. You've just got your map on and you're enjoying it. But you can also take mental note on this long ride, right? Okay, there's a hill there, there's a hill here, and it's really good to know the specific part that you're going to be doing that effort on before you actually go and do it. So I would really recommend pre-planning if you've got specific training, but you need a steep hill if you're going to be aiming for a high effort, a big effort. You have different types of efforts that target your getting your heart rate up. You've got different efforts. So for example, I could say have it on your smallest gear, and then get up that hill in 1 minute. Or I could say have it in your biggest gear, and we're doing strength. We're slowing it right down. You're sitting on the back of the saddle and you're feeling all those muscles work, and you're driving those heels down. You're feeling the strength just soak into your muscles. So really important to think about what kind of ride you want. If you want an easy ride, you're going to want a nice flat route. And then if you're wanting a harder ride with some uphills and downhills, really important to not really shy away from the downhills as well, because I know I love downhills. Can I ask questions for you guys? Who loves the downhill?
That's why I cycle for downhills.
Yeah, I knew you would. But you get a lot of people that are afraid of the downhills, and I've come across it so much. It's so common. But the advice I have for you is just practice it. Just don't shy away from it, because if you, for example, you're out on a bunch ride and you don't know where they're going, And you've got friends there who'll stay back with you and things, but you might come across a downhill and you don't want to have to go back. So really important to practice what you're afraid of. And the downhills and if you're afraid of the uphills, get on them hills. Get on them hills.
I'm more afraid of the uphills than I am of the down, but everyone's different, aren't they? And planning that. Right. We've got so many comments coming in today and questions. So we're going to do what we normally do, which is ask you guys to pick out some comments, but I'm going to ask you to pick out a couple today because I want people to really have a chance to get some of that knowledge out of you. I'm going to start with this one, just throw it to all of you from Tessa. It says, how do you waterproof your phones and Garmin's from the elements? Because that's what puts her off. And also the battery life. And that battery life has come up before. People say that, really does use a lot of juice, some of these apps. So waterproofing, Fran, off you go.
Phones, you can get phone cases. We sell some SKS Smart Boys. You can put your iPhone in it and put it on your handlebars. It's fully waterproof. Garmin's, most of them should be waterproof, so that's not a problem. Battery life, you need to do simple things like turn the brightness off from 100%. You don't ever need the brightness on a screen on 100%. And I've had brightness at 50%, and your Garmin should last 8 hours plus with navigation and not be any problems at all. And if it's less than that, then I'd suggest it's getting a bit old and tired.
Right.
Also, if you're using your phone rather than a Garmin or something, if you've downloaded the map to your phone, then it uses less data because it's not tracking where you are all the time. So if that area is downloaded onto your phone, then it's not having to search for you all the time. So not quite so easy for tracking where you are, but if you kind of know where you're going, then you can just see the map and follow the route, and then only need to use your GPS if you think, oh God, am I on the right track? Have I taken a wrong turn or whatever? So it's a battery saver for your phone.
And Helen Johnston, she says that she totally agrees when we were talking earlier about how Strava can encourage some selfish behaviour. So thanks for raising the issue. Jenny, you said that you could get quite competitive, just maybe with yourself, with your average speed. Have you got any advice about that?
I'm terrible with myself. So when I'm like Rachel was saying as well about with the stats, I have to have it purely so that it's just on the route. So it either tells me how far I've gone or how long I've got left to go, rather than what my average speed is. Because otherwise I get really cross with myself if that number goes, because I always start out too quickly, classic. So then as the ride goes on and the average speed goes down, I'm like, well, this is annoying. So then on Charlene's point about dangerous, if I'm spending all my time looking at my average speed on the screen, I'm not looking up, firstly not enjoying where I am and enjoying the views and having fun on the ride, but also not noticing what's going around me, because I'm constantly watching that number, and if it's going down the wrong way, then it's not going to be so fun. And it's the same, I think, whether it's cycling, running, whatever, going out for the experience and to enjoy it without looking at the stats until after you get back, you're going to probably have a better experience, enjoy it more, and I find quite often have a more consistent speed or actually go faster because I'm thinking about enjoying what I'm doing rather than focusing on every last stat. And at the end of the day, if we're not like pros like you guys, we're not training for anything, it's just for us anyway, so might as well just make the most of it and enjoy it.
Brilliant, thanks for that. And I think we're going to say goodbye to Charlene because she's got to go to an appointment. Someone who's very luckily getting trained by Charlene. I think we all want her to be our coach right now. Or that.
I've got one. I just got a comment that I really want to read before I go. It's James Falconer. It's the number of girls that have taken up the bike over the last 10 years or so that have been so amazing. But not only have they taken to the bike, but they have kept it up. Whereas I find the males show up with their most expensive gear, but not long after bike is left in the garage. It's only my opinion, but I'm 87 and I'm cycling every week and have been for 80 years. Apart from that, I like when they come alongside me and have a chat and then disappear over the horizon. I mean, I just want to be you when I'm 87. I just want to be you. So you're so inspirational. And I hope I come across you on the bike. Maybe I have before. I'm not sure where you live, but that's so amazing. Well done. And really, really such an amazing comment. But yeah, that was just phenomenal.
Thanks for highlighting that, Charlene. Yeah, it was a really brilliant comment. And thanks for all your input today. We'll say goodbye to you. And Rachel, have you got a comment that you would like to raise onto the screen? Anything you'd like to pick? Or anyone else ready? Jenny, Fran's got one. And I'm going to go and put something in while I talk about it.
Charlie nicked my comment I was going to use. Clearly we all wanted to use the same one. But Shirley Moritz has said, if I see a route on Strava that someone has done and I fancy, I save the route to try at some point. I think it's a feature of Strava Premium. I think it is, but it is a very good point again. The cost of Strava Premium is very low, but that is a very good idea. You see your friends out riding in the local area. You think, oh, that's a good route. There's literally 3 little buttons and you can download their route and nick it. So, and it's also useful then for when you see friends that go on holiday. You know, loads of people go to, say, Mallorca. If you see a friend do a trip in a foreign holiday, you can also nick it for future reference. So yeah, that's a very good point there, Shirley.
Excellent. Jenny, which one did you have ready?
Mine is Jennifer Helen's comment from 123. So I agree, a sense of direction goes hand in hand with map reading. Always able to get myself out of a wrong turn easy enough. Worst case, there's no shame in turning back, which I think is absolutely right. And Rachel, you had a great point you put in our chat about route planning for beginners, which I think links really nicely to that comment.
Yeah, so it's kind of a comment for beginners, but also, I guess, for more experienced riders as well. One sort of great tip for if you're putting the route together yourself is to kind of like plan your route as if it's a clover shape. So it kind of gives you almost like, I guess, like 3, or if you've got a 4-leaf clover, four like options to go back to the start. So whether you're on road or off road, things can go wrong. You can get a puncture, run out of tubes, you can run out of fuel, like fuel as in your energy, or the weather can just turn and you want to get back to base. And if you plan your route in that kind of shape, it means you've got these extra sort of loops, the distances, and you can just cut back at any point. And I think it's a great way to build up your confidence with route planning. You can kind of, okay, this week I'm just going to do 2 of the leafs, or next week I'll do all of the leafs, and it just gives you a bit more experience of like riding those further distances until you're completely happy, with sort of going on a big full loop and being confident that you'll be fine when you're at that furthest point away, and that applies on road and off road.
Yeah, that's excellent advice there, actually. Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to pull out a comment, which I've already brought up before, about someone's data switching off in France and not being able to access their maps. So I did a trip to France once. I cycled through France with a boyfriend and we'd planned our route on a map. However, when you go to a foreign country, they don't label their motorways in the same way that we label ours. So we planned most of our routes on E-roads, because I was like, A-roads, we don't want to be going on the A-roads. Obviously, we want to be avoiding the M's, but an E sounds great. An E means a European-wide motorway. So we actually we cycled a whole junction on a motorway, and we were like, why are all the cars tooting us? I thought the French meant to be friendly towards cyclists and things like that. And yeah, we were on an E-road. So do your research properly if you're going to be cycling in a foreign country. Right, should we pick out one more comment each before we go? Because there have been so many today. I don't want people to not get their comments and points out. Fran, are you ready with one?
I am, but they're not necessarily the route planning. We've got 2. Jules Christie and Karen Edwards have both highlighted, I'm petrified of downhills, or I'm scared of downhills. I find that sad in the sense that I really enjoy riding downhill. Riding downhill doesn't necessarily mean you have to ride fast, but I feel sad for them that they don't get that enjoyment of feeling of, being free and being able to relax on the bike. So maybe come to our Velovixen Facebook chat page. There's lots of advice in there. There's loads of us in there who can give you some more tips and try to help you relax and enjoy that aspect of riding a little bit more. because it is a nice feeling just to be able to ride downhill, relaxed, and look at what's around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate fear, and if it's something you're not used to, it's definitely well warranted. But there are tips and ways of getting rid of that fear for sure. I've met so many people who've managed to overcome that. Jenny, what's your second comment?
I'm going to go with Janet Barnard. Sounds like a woman after my own heart. Whatever app I use, I get lost, more so in the car. I've absolutely no sense of direction, should not be let out on my own. Like it's currently on the turbo trainer, so I definitely won't get lost there. So, yeah, I completely understand that. But hopefully, over the last hour or so, with all of the apps, tips, and tactics we talked about, then maybe we might be able to help.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I know, Janet, you do watch a lot of these, so do let us know next week whether this chat has inspired you to get out and push your map reading skills a little bit more. Brilliant. And Rachel?
I'm just going to pull out Nicola Hobbs, which is, she's just talking about Commute, great for identifying routes when commuting. And I also Google Maps to have a look at the road layout. This is a really good point, actually. It's something that I do for on-road and off-road. On Commute, you have like the highlights or comment, like people can put comments in, and I'll often check those comments because a route could be amazing in the summer, but then for winter, the roads could be one of those roads which is liable to flooding, or like the cycle path is just mud in the winter, or like the trail is just like around here you wouldn't ride on the South Downs too much in the winter because it's chalk, so it's just going to be lethal in the winter. So a route that someone's put on one of these apps could be great in the summer. In the winter, just horrendous. So it's always worth, like in something like Commute, you can like look at the tips or the highlights, and it'll tell you, people can make comments on, I don't ride this in the winter. And it's always worth just having a Google as well if there's anything in a particular section of a route that people have said absolutely avoid this at a certain time of year.
Exactly, because Google have got the satellite option, and you can sometimes drag and drop the little person into the screen and you get a 360 view of exactly what that area looks like, which is actually really fantastic and free to use tool on anyone that's got the internet. Right, that's it, over time as usual, but I'm glad that we've got through a lot of the comments and the questions. Thank you so much to the audience for getting so involved. That's what makes these episodes so much more rewarding. Thank you to our guest. Brilliant insight there as usual, and we're going to be back same time next week for the final episode in this season. It's going to be a Christmas special, so it's going to be loads of surprises, loads of fun, maybe even a few giveaways, so do make sure you tune into that. And then later on the same evening, we have our Cycling UK Break the Cycle Christmas games with star cycling guests. We have got some of the biggest names in cycling joining us on screen and showing support for Cycling UK and all of the work that we do. So we'd love to see you there next week. Thank you for now. See you then. Bye.
Bye.